Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 407 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Ryan Staley joins us from Parents Defending Education at 5 o'clock. We'll talk about President Trump trying to get control of the schools across the country. They all receive all of this federal funding. What have they been using it for? Well, too many have been using it for racial bigotry and body negativity. President Trump saying we're putting an end to that crap. We're going to focus on educating children. That's ahead with Ryan at 5 o'clock. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The Trump administration has been very, very busy this last now week and a half. Yesterday, the Daily Caller's Reagan Reese, who joined us later on this program, had an opportunity to ask Caroline Levitt about whether or not the constellation of NGOs who have been taking your money to bring illegal aliens into the country, whether or not that was going to be done for.
Does the president intend to permanently cut off funding to NGOs that are bringing illegal foreign nationals to the country, such as Catholic Charities?
I am actually quite certain that the president signed an executive order that did just that, and I can point you to that.
And she can point us to that. Our next guest can point us to it as well. Nate Hochman joins us. He's the executive director of America 2100, and he's all over this. Nate, good to talk to you today, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Vince.
All right, so we've had some discussions over the years about all these organizations that have been taking our cash to bring in foreign nationals. Is this as big of a deal as it seems?
It's incredibly big deal. I mean, what you have to understand is the mass immigration crisis in general, like, it's not an accident, right? It wasn't just something that sort of happened to magically start, a decade or so ago. It's a well-oiled system, and at the very center of the system are these gigantic non-governmental organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, charities. Some of them are religious, some of them are secular, but all of these NGOs are receiving hundreds of millions of dollars a year from the federal government. And they're the ones who are facilitating the border crisis from all the way down at the bottom of South America, ferrying illegals all the way up to the border,
Yes.
and then resettling them here in the country.
So, and they dress it up as some sort of humanitarian mission, like as if they're running a soup kitchen for hungry people. But that's not really what this is it?
No, I mean, I think if you ask some of the people who are working there, they are ideologically committed to mass immigration. They think that America accepting infinite immigrants at all times is, the moral, humane thing to do. But a lot of people are making a lot of money off of this. I mean, again, when you've got hundreds of millions of tax dollars coming out every single year of the federal purse,
Yes.
There's a lot of money to be made, and they have a vested interest in continuing that system.
And also, if you are deciding whether or not you are going to illegally immigrate into the United States, it's a big deal to know that once you arrive, you will be placed with an organization that's going to provide for everything that you need, your travel, your shelter, your accommodations, getting to your destination. There's a full-blown travel agency at somebody else's expense that's dedicated to helping you succeed in that illegal mission, right?
Well, it's even better than a travel agency. Most travel agencies don't give you a cash card or just cash in envelopes, which is what a lot of these NGOs and charities do. I mean, they have videos and pictures of these NGO workers literally handing out cash in envelopes to illegal immigrants coming across the southern border. And again, where's that cash coming from? Almost entirely from the taxpayer purse. It's just converting it from tax dollars into cash in envelopes to hand out to illegal immigrants.
And I've noticed through the years that when reporters would try to get close to any of these organizations to see what they were doing as they were bringing in all of these foreign nationals, that they were always treated like something very duplicitous was going on. They didn't want cameras. They didn't want attention. They didn't want any of these images to be captured. So I just off the top of my head, people like James O'Keefe trying to get to the bottom of this, or Bill Maloogian at the Fox News Channel. You've got all these people who were trying to, real reporters trying to get answers, who were constantly given kind of the curtain treatment. Don't look behind this curtain.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of that is because almost all of these NGOs are effectively acting as an extension of the federal government. All of their migration budgets are almost 100% covered by the federal government. That's where the money's coming from. So it's the federal government, and especially, bureaucracies like the State Department, outsourcing their pro-mass migration, pro-illegal immigration policy to these ostensibly non-governmental actors. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a scandal, is that all of this is effectively government policy by any other name.
Right. And I think the most important point you've brought so far, everything you're saying is great, but that was at the outset that none of this was an accident. None of this was, we were just we didn't know what to do about the border crisis. It was the U.S. government that was creating it in concert with these NGOs. And so when President Trump comes in and he decides right away that he's stripping all of the funding, that's one of the biggest possible ways you could get all of this under control, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the reason people come to America now en masse is because it's a magnet. All of these different things are incentives for people to come here. You can come here, you'll have an NGO hand you, a stack full of cash. They'll get you a job. They'll find you housing. You'll get to go on welfare. If your kids are born here, they get to become citizens. You have access to the healthcare system. All of that stuff didn't exist during the Ellis Island era. You hear advocates of immigration today talk about how we're a nation of immigrants and this is just like Ellis Island. It's not. When you came over in the Ellis Island era, it was you and your work ethic, and that was about it. Nobody was going to give you a hand up. Now you have all of these goodies that are available to you, again, on the taxpayer dime.
No, that's right.
That didn't exist back then.
That's right. In fact, every Ellis Island story I've ever heard always includes somebody just arriving with the shirt on their back and a couple of dollars in their pocket. And typically those stories detail exactly how much money was in the pocket. It was 74 cents was in the man's pocket as he arrived at Ellis Island. And in fact, they usually would take something from you, right? Corey and Ganamort, his family lost the letter on the end of their name. They literally... He got here. His family was in Ganamorte. They stripped the E off the end of it because they were just rushing people through. Now he's in Ganamort, living with the consequences of what was stolen from him at Ellis Island. This is a very different world, isn't it, Nate?
Absolutely. I mean, it's sort of perfectly American. You meet all these Americans these days whose names are sort of bastardized versions of, Eastern European or Irish or whatever names. And you could tell that it was just some immigration officer at Ellis Island going, it sounds like this. That's good enough. And that's the family name from then on. So,
yeah. No, this is very different. Also, just to remind people, those people all came in legally, whereas everyone we're talking about is coming in completely illegally and is being given goodie bags and no COVID jab requirements. Do they? They don't have that, Nate, right?
No, it's the jab requirements are only for citizens.
Yeah.
Right. If you're coming in illegally, it's basically anarchy. But it's not even just anarchy because, again, all of this is structural and systemic. It's not just this chaotic people crossing the border. These NGOs, which again are being funded by your tax dollars, are literally ferrying people up from South America. They have way stations in the Darien Gap and all these other places with shelter and medical services. They have humanitarian transportation vans. That's what they call it, humanitarian transportation, to literally drive them up to the border. And then once they get to the border, not only do they have cash, they have an army of lawyers waiting there who are there to help them beat U.S. immigration laws, to coach them on what they have to say to qualify for asylum. And then once you do that, they'll resettle you in a town or an American community or a city. So from start to finish, it starts well south of the border. That's what these NGOs are doing.
And that legal counsel continues while those illegal foreign nationals are in the country. Those same organizations are giving these guys attorneys to help them stay in the country and to evade detection from, immigration and customs enforcement. It really is as corrupt as it could possibly be.
Absolutely. What people have to understand is these groups exist to subvert and undermine U.S. immigration law. That's what their MO is. That's literally what they exist to do. And that's why it's so scandalous that they're effectively extensions of the government, is that it's the government effectively funding the subversion of our own laws, of the laws that they're supposed to be enforcing. So you can't understand mass immigration crisis without understanding the central role that these groups play. And that's why Trump cutting them out at the knees is such a monumental victory.
And these are also 501c3s. They're tax-exempt organizations. So they're not subjected to the same taxation that the rest of us are. So they have all these incredible carve-outs and privileges. And I would venture a guess that most Americans had no knowledge of how this was all built using their money.
Well, and tragically, not all of them, but a lot of them are religious. right? You've got the sort of the 10 big NGOs, the VOLAGs, that's what they're called, that work with the state government or State Department. Most of them are religious. You've got Catholic Charities. You've got the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which is Jewish. You've got a Lutheran World Charities. Like, there's a lot of these Christian and other denominational charities which are extensions of churches, right? And it's tragic that churches that the faith, which is obviously such a central part of American life, has been sort of perverted and bastardized and co-opted by these mass immigration activists.
Yes. Well, what they've done is they've taken organizations with noble missions, and they have subverted their intent towards really kind of cruel political goals, because in the end, this doesn't actually help the people in question. What it does is it creates an underclass that's exploited by the ruling class in the United States of America, and that also comes at the expense of American workers. This is why, in the case of the Catholic Church in particular, when we talk about Catholic Charities and the ways that it's been subverted, if you look at the writings of, like, say, Pope John Paul II, he was crystal clear about the need to be both welcoming and accommodating to refugees, but simultaneously to be deeply respectful of a country's laws, the requirements for assimilation, and not to aid and abet illegal immigration. And yet that Catholic Charities, by taking in hundreds of millions of dollars, has subverted a noble mission into something unrecognizable.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the problems is across the board, a lot of modern Christian leaders have confused Christianity with liberalism, right? So they now insist that things that no Christian prior to 1960 would ever believe was a Christian imperative are now moral imperatives for any Christian. If you're a Christian, you have to support open borders. That would, again, strike almost every Christian for all of the history of Christendom up until about 5 minutes ago as nonsense. But now a lot of these faith leaders are effectively insisting that it's a mandatory part of being a Christian.
That's right.
Which is obviously absurd.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for any other easy ways to determine, who's gone astray, look no further than that, like, Episcopal priestess last week who was screaming at Trump and J.D. Vance and saying that what we need is more girls who think they're boys and vice versa. That's You've come pretty far from the Bible, and now you're just in full-blown left-wing politics. Hey, Nate Hochman, thank you with America 2100. Thank you for all of your wisdom on this and so many other things. Good to talk to you today, sir. Those free speech forum tickets, I am told reliably, are selling very quickly, so get a hold of them while you can. I'd love to see you out there. I missed last year. I hate to say it. I had a bit of a medical episode. Well, I guess I can't promise this, but I'll do it anyway. I'm going to be there this year. No medical episode. Oh, boy, I hope that doesn't come back to haunt me. All right, let's see. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jay, Arlington, line 2. Hello, Jay. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, you're exactly right, but you're one of the few that will have the courage to call these actors out for exactly what they are, and the administration needs to do it ASAP. They are coyotes or traffickers by other names. And like the cartels, if you cut off the money or the money's in kind, Trump's problem and our country's problem will be solved, whether it's the money itself or it's Census Bureau counting or tax dollars or voting privileges or any number of other things. Even the right cocktail parties. If we stop paying these people with what's important to them, their heart sizes will shrink 2 sizes too small.
Yeah, the budget is really important, Jay. I was talking to somebody recently. I won't disclose who it was, but who was thinking about whether or not he might go into the Trump administration, and he was thinking about various jobs and whether or not he'd want like a policy gig or something that controls a budget. And his view is, I kind of want to go into something that controls a budget, because if you control purse strings, you can actually make real change. And it gets right to the point that you're making.
Purse strings are just part of it. Votes are another part of it. Census counts to reapportion representation in Congress is another part of it. And the left with the big hearts, you make them either pay for these sanctuary cities, pay out of their own funding, no federal funds permitted. They will dry up just like they'll have a reformation just like Mayor Adams did in New York City.
That's right.
You don't let Brandon collect money for them. If he has to pay for it out of his own budgets, they will suddenly have a turn apart. So the money is absolutely essential, but it's the votes and the reapportionment.
Yeah, that's right. And
if we something as simple as cocktail parties,
and if we
want to
start
be able to go to
sending
their parties.
And if we start sending all these illegals to Gitmo, there are no congressional districts in Gitmo, so we're good there. We don't have to worry about the census in Guantanamo. Hey, Jay, thank you. Very smart points. Yeah,
Yes,
no, this
sir.
is
Thank you.
all this trafficking needs to stop. Russ is calling in from Alexandria, line 3. Russ, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese show. Hello.
Good afternoon, Vince. First thing, I just want to tell you, you are the best prepared host in all of talk radio.
Wow.
That's it. The last caller is absolutely correct. And when people think about NGOs and nonprofits, they immediately start to think that this is Mother Teresa. It's not. These are vast money-making enterprises, and it is nothing but a racket for human trafficking. And the funding and the money has to stop.
It's essential. And taking a closer look at all these so-called nonprofits and how they're actually operating. We have, as you point out, we have entire industries of organizations with tax exemptions, non-government organizations, and they claim they're doing one thing, and in fact, it's just one big corrupt money-generating operation that doesn't really serve the taxpayer well. There's too much of that. A lot of that going on in Washington. President Trump, I think he's scratching the surface, but man, I'm glad somebody's scratching. It's 429. Hey, good afternoon. 435 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 5 o'clock, Ryan Staley is with us from Parents Defending Education. We'll talk about President Trump's efforts to I was going to say something mean. I shouldn't say anything mean. No, I'm not going to say it. Corey wants me to say it. I don't think I can say. I don't think the FCC would let me say what I wanted to say. He's going to unscrew the education system. Let's just put it that way. They've really messed with the kids, haven't they? Pushing all this radical gender ideology and racism inside the classroom. President Trump cutting off all the funding for that. And meanwhile, we've got these awful, awful test scores coming in. Did you know that 8th grade literacy is now being measured at one of the lowest rates it's ever been? Ever? It is crazy. I'm serious. The study just came out last 24 hours. 33% of the nation's 8th graders are functionally illiterate. 33% of our country's 8th graders can't understand the words that are on the page in front of them. That is a massive deal. And we spend all this time trying to, socially engineer the kids in the classroom, all this money, all these operations. And you got these teachers unions who are, teachers are so important. We need to be paid more. How is it going in the classroom? What is happening inside of these classrooms? A third of the 8th graders can't read? I think we may have taken our eye off the ball. We'll talk to Ryan Staley at 5 o'clock about that. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Two other big news items I'm staring at right now that I want to share with you. One of them is that the United States Marines are now helping to reinforce our southern border. And thank goodness we've got a post on X from U.S. Northern Command that the United States Marine Corps, their 1st Marine Division, is a part of efforts right now to reinforce the southern border. That's near San Ysidro, California. San Ysidro is right by San Diego, and you can see the city from the border. That's the very end of our nation's border. The Marines are down there, and they're putting up all of this barbed wire on the wall to reinforce it, to make it even more difficult to try and break into our country. They're doing that as a part of U.S. Northern Command's efforts, working with Customs and Border Protection and DHS to secure the border and curtail illegal border crossings. So the president, once again, if you were looking for evidence, not messing around on any of this. The other big item this hour that you may have heard already on our newscast is that Senator Bob Menendez was just sentenced today to 11 years in prison. Gold Bar Bob getting 11 years in prison in New Jersey. In New Jersey. And as my old buddy Mary Walter points out, I saw her post on X on this subject today. She said, that's a big deal. If for a Democrat to get 11 years in prison for corruption in New Jersey, he's got to be very corrupt. That takes a lot. Former Senator Bob Menendez sentenced to 11 years in prison Wednesday for promising to swap the power of his office for gold bars and other bribes, capping the New Jersey lawmaker's extraordinary downfall after a half-century political career. A federal jury last summer finding Menendez, 71 years old, guilty of bribery, fraud, and illegal foreign agent offenses. The Democrat lawmaker, who until his indictment chaired the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee, announced his resignation from the Senate after he was convicted. In a packed room in the New York federal court, Menendez gave a 12-minute speech punctuated by tears. Quote, "I have made more than my share of mistakes and bad decisions, but I believe in my half-century of public service, I have done far more good than bad." Well, on net, I was doing pretty good. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of bad moments, but in the end, if it comes out in the wash, it was more good than bad. It was the first case in which a U.S. senator has been convicted of a crime that involved abusing his leadership position on a Senate committee, and the first in which any person had been convicted of serving as a foreign agent while in public office, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. It really doesn't get more perfect than this. He's a foreign agent getting gold bars stuffed into all of his clothing, and he is the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Can you imagine that? Can you even imagine, is there any other person who's ever been head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee who you could think to yourself, man, that guy's really corrupt. He's probably taking a lot of money from other countries in order to do their bidding at our expense. Anybody else ever come to mind? Oh, that's right, Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Joe Biden's family has made untold sums of money from all of these foreign interests. And it was Bob Menendez who took the fall. In fact, I think it was, whose Justice Department started the prosecution? Oh, that was right. That's Biden's Justice Department. What a neat trick. So today he gets sentenced to 11 years. As I was going over all of the Q&As today from these United States senators to RFK Jr., and they're acting like, oh, I just want to make sure you don't have any conflicts of interest. Meanwhile, they're all conflicted out the wazoo, these United States senators. They're taking huge sums of cash from the very companies and organizations who desperately don't want RFK to get to the bottom of America's health crisis. And one of their compatriots, one of their buddies, just got 11 years in prison for being completely captured by foreign interests. Prosecutors saying during all of this, you'll remember some of this, that in exchange for bribes, including gold bars and a luxury Mercedes-Benz convertible, Menendez pressured a federal agency not to contest a halal meat monopoly granted by Egypt to a New Jersey businessman. The lawmaker also promised to disrupt criminal proceedings in New Jersey and to aid Cairo, that would be Egypt, in efforts to obtain hundreds of millions of dollars in U.S. aid, prosecutors said. Even the prosecutor, Paul Monteleone, had to say something kind of nice about Menendez. Quote, "For all the good he has done in his life, ultimately, he believed that the power he wielded belonged to him." Now, most of you are going to remember this because this audience is smart and has the long view. This is not even the first time Menendez has been tried for federal corruption. Menendez survived a federal corruption trial a couple of years back. There was a hung jury on the question of just how corrupt he was, and then prosecutors didn't bring the case again. That one involved his buddy Solomon Melgen. Remember that guy? The Florida ophthalmologist who was apparently defrauding the United States taxpayer. He was charging way too much for all of this medication that he said he was dispensing to his patients. And it was Menendez who was his buddy. The two of them would vacation in the Dominican Republic together. And there was, this is where all the prostitution allegations were popping up about Bob Menendez. Oh, no, not me. Uh-huh. Yeah, well, we finally got him. He's doing 11 years in jail now. We'll see if they actually force him to do 11. But Bob Menendez busted here. And once again, and he's been theatrically for many years one of the single most corrupt United States senators, but I think he's got a lot of competition in that role. Let's see. Joel is calling in from Lovettsville here on line 6. Hello, Joel. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Oh, my gosh, Vince, as always, you're amazing. And like the other gentleman said, so well prepared. I just had to recertify in my training, my FCPA training, that prohibits the payment of anything of value to foreign officials to gain any type of business advantage. You know, when I take the training, they talk about shell companies, getting paid through shell companies and LLCs and various things like that. And I can go, Biden, Menendez, Warren. I mean, you know, you can sit there and go down the checklist. And if I did anything like that at all, and let me tell you something, might as well put my hands up in the air, throw the handcuffs on me, and cart me away. Yet these people have made hundreds of millions of dollars off something that is absolutely 100% grossly illegal. And like I say, I just did the update training.
Yeah, and the guy, and you know how this corruption works in Washington. Some of it is kind of publicly visible, right? They take campaign contributions from certain interests, and then in the hopes of continuing to get those campaign contributions, they will fight for them, and that's the corrupt kind of public nature of that relationship. But meanwhile, like what Elizabeth Warren did today with RFK, as she's like she's trying to stop him from suing pharmaceutical companies. Meanwhile, she's taking millions from the medical industry. But Bob Menendez here, it's even more unbelievable. The guy, he's taking gold bars.
Oh my God! And we need to have training to how to circumvent the Foreign Corruption Policy Acts and things. See, we need they must have that training at the federal government level on how to circumvent getting caught violating the FCPA rules, because you know what? I haven't seen that training yet. We don't get that.
Yeah, and then these people have the audacity to lecture the rest of us about,
my God.
And he's the head of the Senate Foreign.
Not for me.
He's the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's taking money from all these foreign interests, literally in his closet. They found gold bars. I can't even get over how hilarious that is, and totally corrupt.
Well, every time I take the section where it talks about receiving money or transferring money to offshore or shell companies, ding, 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 good old Biden pops up in my head, of course, you know, with his 12 offshore or shell companies. I mean, it's just so corrupt, and yet they're not going to suffer any consequences for it. So I'm kind of glad they made a little case poster child out of Gold Bar.
Yeah, it's a start. All right. Hey, Joel, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You betcha, Vince. Pleasure to listen to you. Take care, my friend.
Thank you very much, sir.
Right,
that's really nice.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's see here. I've got Cindy calling in from Bethesda now on line 4. Hello, Cindy. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Great show today. Great callers. I am so glad that these people are getting what they deserve. The corruption is so thick and so deep, and it needs to be thwarted at every opportunity. Yeah. What has been going on in the Darien Gap, the NGOs, the money we're paying for it. I want a tax break. I want Trump, the next thing to him, the announcement, everybody gets a tax break. I'm tired of paying high taxes. And then everything else is going up in cost of insurance, cost of groceries, transportation. It's all going up. Okay. And I'm a contractor, Vince. And then they put the squeeze on us, the little guy. Oh, we can't order any office supplies right now. Well, what do you mean? Well, we're going to have to get, approval for paper clips and paper towels. Mm-hmm. Okay. I get it, but let's go after the big fish. Okay. I'm not the one smuggling gold bars in my backpack.
True.
Back and forth. Okay.
True.
So I want Trump to give me a tax break and everybody else a tax break, the hardworking American tax worker, and continue to go after the people for the waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption, because I'm sick of hearing about the corruption and how they get away with this stuff. And they know who the people are. They know. They all take the training, like the last caller said. They know. They put their hand up. They take the oath. Yes, I'm good. Will not do these things. And they turn right around and do it. And I'm tired of it.
Me too.
I'm tired of being told, well, you may have to bring in your own paper towels to work. Nonsense. I want these people to be held accountable.
Amen. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Defund and prosecute. That's a huge deal. Thank you, Cindy. It's an excellent point. And, when what we're looking at right now is a massive correction, and thankfully. as President Trump is defunding these organizations that have been robbing us blind. That includes the federal government has been handing away your money that they take from your paycheck every month. And look, as far as tax cuts go, President Trump has made no – he ran on this. He ran on, one, making permanent the Trump tax cuts that he put in place originally, which are set to expire at the end of this year unless congressional action takes place. Thankfully, President Trump is here to make sure that comes through. We get those tax cuts. Also, he is back – I don't know if everyone saw this, but he is back to once again proposing abolishing the federal income tax entirely. This is something he kind of referenced a little bit on the campaign trail, primarily – the tax cut consideration he had made during the campaign was no tax on tips. That's the thing that he kept mentioning. But he, once again, is now talking about this idea of, well, maybe no federal income taxes at all, because he's sort of reciting over and over that he wants to get back to the era where the Treasury brought in revenue by way of our external taxation, which is tariffs. Get back to that and then limit the damage on American citizens. So, really, it gets right to the point you're making, Cindy, which is we got to cut all of these out-of-control expenses. We have to stop robbing Americans blind. We have to stop using this money to violate our sovereignty and make things worse in America. And then as we do that, we should also stop taking so much money out of American paychecks.
Agreed, Vince, 100%.
Cindy, thank you. I appreciate the call. All right. Let's see. I've got a lot more ahead, including I've got more great RFK clips. So you should hear some of these exchanges today as these U.S. senators ridiculously go after RFK Jr., who is so much more impressive than they are, 1,000 times more impressive. And coming up in just a few minutes, we're also going to talk to Ryan Staley about the fact that 8th graders can't read in America, and yet the government keeps wasting money on telling them they were born in the wrong body. Maybe if they could read, they would learn that that's not true. Okay, so the Bob Menendez story is getting even more fun by the minute. He was just sentenced to 11 years in prison for being a foreign agent for the Egyptian government. Here he is just outside of the courthouse after his sentencing, saying that President Trump was right about how corrupt the justice system is.
Welcome to the Southern District of New York, the Wild West of political prosecutions. President Trump is right. This process is political, and it's corrupted to the core. I hope President Trump cleans up the cesspool and restores the integrity to the system.
I hope President Trump cleans up the cesspool and restores integrity to the system. Now, I just want to remind everyone what he has previously said about President Trump. Here he is on the Senate floor in February of 2019.
The American people deserve to know who they elected to be their president. They deserve to know if he's in fact putting America's interests first. And they deserve to know if Donald Trump is, wittingly or unwittingly, an agent for the Russian Federation. Congress must carry out its constitutional duty to fully and thoroughly investigate where the facts lead.
Oh, man. Well, the internet is forever. There he is, Bob Menendez, suggesting Donald Trump is an agent, that is, of a foreign power. Correct me if I'm wrong. President Trump never had any gold bars from Vladimir Putin, did he? Inside of his closet? They would have found them. Remember, the FBI literally raided Melania's underwear drawer. No gold bars. Lots of gold stuff at Mar-a-Lago. No gold bars from Vladimir Putin. Stay with us. We talk educating our children next on the Vince Coglianese Show.